to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen.
With me today is abundance teacher and money coach, Jody Lynn Craven.
This is your daily dose of happy. We are so happy you decided to join us today.
Jody Lynn, I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I can think of a number of different kind of people who've never been on the show before. We've never had a criminal lawyer on the show before. We never had a Shaolin priest on the show before. We certainly have not had both on at the same time in the same person.
Yeah.
This is going to be really interesting. We have the Shaolin Perry Mason joining us today to talk about meditation and mindfulness. This sounds like it was staged.
You probably couldn't write this as a fiction book and have it believable.
Well, true. Yeah. Hollywood would never buy that script. No, but it's intriguing.
Mm-hmm. But if I may, I have to say, I'm not a priest. I studied.
Oh, that's much more. No, don't spoil that part.
Okay.
You have the Shaolin people. We'll just go with the priest part anyway, just because it's fun.
All right.
You know?
All right.
Yeah. Why not? No, he's absolutely correct. He's not a Shaolin priest, but he does.
I did study under one.
Yeah. And that makes it all really, really cool. I was a fan of the television series Kung Fu years ago, so that just ties in really good for me. But anyway, so Bob Martin, as I've just alluded to in a very strange way, has a very eclectic background, and I'm going to let him tell the story more specifically himself. But Bob, first of all, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
And tell us the story. Tell us about how you got through. I mean, I only named a few things. You have quite a resume here, but I named a couple that kind of jump out at you. So give us like a little bit of the potted biography.
Okay. So I actually grew up in amusement parks and carnivals. My father, who was an Hungarian immigrant, found his way to the American dream through popcorn and cotton candy.
Okay.
So that's how I grew up. My folks were non-theists. My dad was Hungarian royalty, and the Bolsheviks wiped out his family. My mom was Roma Gypsy. Wow. Everybody wiped out her family, and so they just came to the conclusion that there really couldn't be a God that would allow all that to happen. Okay,
so kind of hard to justify that one scripturally. I get
it. Right. So fast forward, I'm reading science fiction and stuff when I'm 15 and 16, 17, and I'm starting to wonder like how the universe gets organized. Fast forward, I, through a very strange set of circumstances, which is an entirely other story, I wound up in one law school that accepted me. I flunked out of Boston University and then wound up at a small food school, and one law school took a chance on me and I got into it. And then that was down in Fort Lauderdale, and I got hired by Janet Reno in the DA's office in Miami-Dade during the cocaine cowboy days.
Wow.
You know, if you know the movie Scarface or the TV show Miami Vice,
right?
That is the vibe. That really is the vibe of what Miami was like in those days. And I rose up through the ranks, got to be in consumer frauds and economic crimes. And we filed a RICO case against the mob, and we hit them for millions and millions of bucks. Shortly thereafter, I went out in private practice, and who should come and visit me, but I'll call him Johnny.
Okay.
Yeah. And his message was basically, we got really good lawyers and you beat them, so we want to send you clients.
Whoa. Whoa.
So I spent some very exciting years in Miami during those days. At that level, the Colombians and the Haitians and the Italians and the Cubans and the Peruvians are all talking to each other.
Wow.
They're all working out their trade routes and stuff like that. And so I was hanging out with these guys, and like they say, it was the cocaine cowboy days. And I might say that maybe I did a little bit too much of all that. Those were the days of chrome and glass discotheques and all that kind of stuff. So my personal life was pretty much in a tatters, although I was making a lot of money, paid my house off by the time I was 32.
Wow.
And I thought I was invulnerable. I was investing in all kinds of things, and it was like hemorrhaging money. And I was about to have to refinance my house. And I go to my therapist and I go, hey, what should I do? Should I do this? Should I put my house back up? And he pulls out a bunch of coins and starts throwing them on the table and counting them up and making some calculations and drawing lines. Finally, he comes up with a number like 32. And he picks up this book and he opens it to chapter 32 and he shows it to me. And its name of the chapter was Retreat.
Mm-hmm.
Whoa.
And what do you do when you're paying a guy $65 an hour to be your therapist and he's throwing coins, right? So
I wouldn't know. I've never had that experience.
No. So I cursed him out. I stomped out, but that word got emblazoned in my consciousness, and I just knew that it was what I had to do. So started pulling back from stuff, and then I found out that my therapist was actually the English language editor and devotee of Master Watching Ni, who, and dig this, is a 72nd generation. I kind of calculated that out. It's like 1,400 years of passing the priesthood down from father to son.
Wow.
At the Shaolin Temple. Exactly. You mentioned Kung Fu, that old Kung Fu series. That's Shaolin, Tai Chi, Kung Fu, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I studied under Master Ni for 8 years, and it changed my life. And coincidentally, right about then, my Italian client's son got arrested. And up until then, we had a good arrangement. Nothing illegal, nothing unethical. You want to have a lawyer that's trusted by the courts, that has respect in the court system. That's to your best interest. But when his son got arrested, there was no saying no. And I would not do what he asked me to do. So I wound up moving to North Carolina, long story short.
Okay.
And when I got to North Carolina, it was a brand new, fresh canvas.
Yeah.
I had a new life that I could start over, and all the teachings and all the work that I had done with Master Ni for the last 8 years, and all of the practices and all of the engagement in what is truly makes you happy. What is living a joyful, masterful life? What's that really all about? How do you get there, and what do you do? And Master Ni was there. I gotta say, you know, when we say that an athlete is in the zone, he's making all his 3-point shots, and then he comes off the court and that was a great game, and he goes, yeah, man, it didn't even seem like it was me out there. It's in this. Master Ni lived his entire life in the zone. Wow. His conversations were in the zone. And in Taoism, there's an expression, Wu Wei, Wuwei, which means doing, not doing. It means you don't do anything, but nothing remains undone. And that is what living in the zone is like. It's like you're not really doing anything, but something happens and you say something and it's just the perfect thing. And there's no rehearsing thoughts. And that was Master Ni. And he sent me, Lord knows I ain't there, but he showed me the path of how to get a little bit more there. And so now I teach meditation on campus at Elon University. I coordinate mindful activities. I make a difference in people's lives, and I'm 74, and I am one happy dude.
Which is a fantastic thing, and amazing story. I mean, I love it whenever somebody from, I don't know how to label it. I don't want to be disparaging because there's nothing to disparage. It's more, I don't know. I'll try it this way. I love it when someone comes from a straight logical background and goes woo in a big way and is successful with both. I love that story.
Yeah. And we could have a wonderful, really cool conversation about bridging the intuitive intelligence with the verbal intelligence and that whole thing. That's a whole nother podcast.
Oh, we will probably find we want to do 4 or 5 hours in an hour, which obviously is not possible. Yeah. Well, maybe it was for Master Wu. I don't know. I mean, maybe he was able to do that. If he was able to live in that high vibe space long, who knows? Well, it does raise another question, though. The question that it raises in my mind is, you got to work with somebody like that up close. That's a big deal. Mm-hmm. You have some sense of the man, some sense of who he was and how he came into being who he was and so forth. What is it about somebody like him, a true master like that enables him to actually do, like what you said, to live in that high vibe, in the zone space for, forever seemingly? What is it about those people who end up in that category who are able to do that so consistently?
Yeah. Well, in the East, it's all about practice and consistency and doing it over. There's a Japanese expression: if you do it 100 times, it's yours. You own it. And then Bruce Lee once said, I'm not worried about the man who has a 100-pound kick. I am worried about the man who has a 1-pound kick 100 times. So it change is not something that happens, that's difficult. It's not something that takes a long time. It happens instantly. But the preparation for change can take a long time. We have an expression in the West: things go slowly until they go fast. So master, it's a matter of practice, and consistency. And once you practice, like shooting 3-pointers. You look at a good basketball player, they're out on the court hour after hour after hour shooting those 3-pointers. Then they go out in the field and you look at them and they're halfway down the court. They turn around, they sink one, and there's nothing but net. And you go, how did they do that? Well, hours and hours on the court practicing.
Yeah. There was a documentary done on the relationship between Larry Bird and Magic Johnson a few years back, and in that documentary, I think they interviewed both of them, and I can't remember which one said this. I think it may have been Magic who said it. No, it was Larry. It was Larry Bird who said that. He said he went out and he had shot his 400 shots, and then he got interrupted. He said, "I'll bet you he did 500 today." He's like, "No, I haven't done my work yet."
It's true. Although, on the other side of it, there are things like awe, AWE, awe. Awe is kind of like the positive side of PTSD. Something traumatic happens to you and it changes your brain and you relive it and it changes who you are immediately. And awe is kind of like that. It's that kind of experience that you have that rewires your brain. You can't ever not have it anymore. You can't ever forget it. What that felt like. And there are even little words that you say sometimes that are so pithy. Like I heard somebody once say, I'm never going to say I have to do anything anymore. I'm going to say I get to do things. And that, sometimes those little changes change your perspective and they bring about, instantly, a whole new open door to joy.
Do you feel like you're like X number of steps away from where you get that awe thing going on a regular basis?
Yeah. Interesting. There's if you ever have a chance, go to the Greater Good Science Center, GGSC website. It's out in Berkeley, and all the people that work with happiness and positive psychology and broadening and building your brain and the vagus nerve and the brain mind body connection, all the people that are anything in that field work out of the Greater Good Science Center.
Really?
And they have some terrific stuff on their website and some real good, just amazing folks that are out there. But you lost my trend there. What was it that you
Well,
asked?
the question I was asking, I mean, you were describing how you weren't quite there yet to the level that the master was at. And I'm wondering, do you feel like you're X number of steps away from having that awe moment where you're there and you're...
Oh, yeah. So they actually have started doing research on awe. And what they have found is that unlike PTSD, awe has to be intentionally relived and worked. Like when you feel awe, you can remember it, revisualize it, think about it again, build up those neural pathways. And what happens, and what's happened for me, is that by following some of their recommendations, I have more awe in my life. It comes to me easier. More simple things create that feeling of awe. So you can intentionally cultivate more awe in your life. You actually can.
It makes sense. I mean, it's very encouraging. I mean, really encouraging to know that this literally is within our grasp. We really can do that, and that it is about the repetition. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
There's certainly a lot of research that supports that's what it takes in order to make real permanent change in our neural system. So yeah, okay, I can buy into that. It's still kind of awe-inspiring.
Yeah. You know, here in my office, I have my heroes wall. It takes up 2 walls here, and these are people that I think are awesome and inspirational. I think that you have to cultivate your environment. And you put things in it that stimulate those feelings and things that you want to have more of in your life.
Yeah.
And it works. It works. It works on you. The same way, if you go around miserable things all the time, you get to be miserable.
Sure.
The Buddha said, you have to put guardians at the portals to your mind.
Yeah. That's a good way of describing it, isn't it? Yeah. That's really good. I have to say, I'm one of those people who falls in. You're very much into the meditation thing. I know we're going to talk about that in a moment. I'm one of those who falls into the camp that for the longest time I didn't get anywhere with meditation, and then I resisted it for the longest period of time, and then I got some benefit out of it, and then I stopped doing it, and I did a little bit more, and now I do it periodically, but not consistently. And based on what you're talking, I can now understand why it is I haven't been able to achieve the awe. Okay, I get it. Now I have to find a way to make that more consistent.
I just want to say that my experience in meditation was exactly the same as yours.
Exactly. Oh, good. Well,
exactly.
Right in the right
years. It was years of fits and starts. Years.
How about you, Jody Lynn? I mean, you're more of a meditator than I am, but what's your experience been?
Still, yeah, fits and starts, same
Fits and
thing.
starts.
Yeah, depending on the week, the season, whatever.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder, what is meditation?
Yeah.
All right. Well, you just named the question. Let's go to the expert. Bob, what is meditation?
So there's lots of different schools of meditation. There's transcendental meditation, and there's this kind of meditation, and body scans. If you do yoga, you know what the Vipassana is. But the kind of meditation that, when you think of people sitting meditation, what that is let me say what it's not first. It's not quieting your mind.
Thank you.
It's not having no thoughts. It's not being silent. It's not having peace and trinklets and crystals and tinkle tinkle and tree hugging and hippy dippy. And it's not any of that stuff.
By the way, there's nothing wrong with trinkets and hippy dippy. All that stuff is fine.
Yeah.
What it is on one level, it's just simply practicing watching your thoughts, not quieting your thoughts, not trying to change your thoughts, just watching your thoughts. That's at the most basic level. And the instructions, I think the instructions say what it is. If I were to teach somebody the basic, meditation technique, I would say, after a couple of preliminary things, I'd say, so, form an intention to put your attention on your breath. To say, just form an intention. Think to yourself, what I intend to do is pay attention to my breath. And then within 3.7 seconds, your mind's going to go nuts. You're going to think about what you got to do tomorrow, what you should have said to that guy yesterday. You're going to be caught in the same fog of rumination and projection that we tend to go through our day in.
Right.
When we're driving our car. A lot of times, unfortunately, that's the committee in their head is telling you all about what you should have done and what you didn't do right. And there's a lot of negative self-talk in there as well.
Why is it that the self-talk that goes on there is never positive?
Well,
it's always the crap.
Good question.
It's because you don't notice the positive because it doesn't threaten you. The negative stuff is stimulating the fight-flight response, the right side of the brain. And that's your survival instinct. And your survival instinct is always going to be looking for danger, because when we lived as hunter-gatherers, we had to scan the universe. We had to scan our environment because we never knew where the next snake was or the next wolf was coming from and the like. And so our mind is still the same mind that was out in the jungle. We haven't evolved into a different creature. So our mind's always scanning for danger. But today, the danger is not tigers and snakes. It's missed deadlines and using the wrong word or saying or being offensive or somebody not liking us or not getting something that we want. And so those are our dangers, and they're kind of undefined and they're caught in a fog. And we're always kind of in that fog, scanning and trying to figure out and resolve them.
Well, some of them are real. I mean, especially for somebody who has, a predator in their lives, or
sure.
With, the unhappy spouse, or the kids are a mess, or the boss, or whatever. There are real threats too.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you're involved in those threats, you're not lost in a fog. Your attention is on them.
You are the fog, really.
Huh?
You are the fog.
You are the fog.
You're creating all that fog, brand new fog based on new experience. Like, here we go again.
Yeah. But it's like when you're driving a car and you're in that fog of default, but somebody gets a little too close to you, it feels real different. All of a sudden, your attention is on it. Right. And if you're looking at a brain scan, you can actually see the electrical activity in the brain shift to a different area.
Right.
Okay. So what we do initially in meditation is we watch that stream of consciousness. We watch that default fog going on and letting it happen, letting it go. And what happens is that we start to notice and we start to begin to be aware of the fact that there is a stream of consciousness. There is a stream of thoughts that seems to go through our mind. And it's like there's a river, is like the stream. And on the river, there are twigs and leaves, and those are our particular thoughts. And they kind of come from upriver somewhere. Okay. And then they're existing in front of us, and we're aware of them. And then they go off, float downriver, and they're replaced by another one. And so this process goes on. And then we start to realize that our thoughts are nothing. They're electrical impulses. You can't hold them in your hand. You can't sell them. You can't trade them. They're not barterable.
I mean, it's not like they don't try.
Yeah. I mean,
sometimes they're even successful, if it's a compelling enough thought.
If it's a compelling enough thought, it may turn into something. Yeah. But they're just fleeting things that go through. I mean, you can grab one and then start to develop it and cultivate it, of course. Sure. So, when we start to notice the stream, when we start to notice the thoughts, we also start to notice that we're in a different place noticing them. Okay? And it's in that different place noticing our thoughts that we find the stability and the consistency and the calmness. Because I mean, I think that if you think about your own experience, you'll see that I could be really angry, but if I have a thought like I'm really angry, that place of noticing my anger is not angry.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what we do in meditation is we pry ourselves away from being our thoughts to, at the same time as we are our thoughts, watching our thoughts, getting up on the bank of the river and watching ourselves floating down the river on a leaf in the river. And even if the river is white water or we're going over a waterfall, from the place of watching ourselves go over the waterfall, we're safe and we're stable. And that gives us a certain comfort and resilience in life. And even if I get caught up with it, and even if I get caught up with the fear, I still have developed the skill of jumping off that and getting up on the bank and watching it.
For me, the skill was so, what's the word I want to use? I almost said severe, but that sounds negative. So extreme, perhaps, that I lived there for most of my life.
Where?
In that observer place. To the point where I realized I was missing out on a lot of life.
I get you.
Yeah. And even today, sometimes I still find myself there. And because it does feel safe. It feels very safe. It feels it's very detached, but it feels very safe. It feels like, well, okay, that isn't really me. That's just me watching me. So no big deal.
So let me ask, are you really watching you, or you are just withdrawing? Can you watch yourself withdrawing?
I can't answer the question.
So that's if you were my student and those were your logs that were coming in, I would slowly start kind of edging you towards the idea that even what you think is watching yourself may be being in your thoughts of concern, of involvement, of being concerned about being judged, withdrawing, staying safe. And there's a lot of thoughts associated with that. Now, if we can get to the place where we're watching those thoughts.
Second level.
Yeah.
And if, now that we define it that way, I can say I, without a whole lot of control, move between first and second level.
Okay. Yeah. And folks, there are many folks that do, then that's fine. And so the skill would be coming in, the intentionality of all that is where the skill would be.
Well, I would think also the skill is in getting to second level without becoming completely detached.
Correct.
And that's the part that when you were asking the question, that's the part I couldn't answer. I couldn't describe how to do that or what that was like or anything, because it's not even clear to me what that is. I mean, Jody Lynn, I'm talking about my experience. What's your experience? I mean, are you like a detacher? I mean, are you able to make first level, second level? Do you live in first and second level at all? I'm curious.
It's interesting because I wouldn't define it the way that you've said it. Not that it's right or wrong, just observing and thinking about the words that you're saying. I would say I am very good at the observing my thoughts and taking a step back from there. But I've never thought of it as detachment. I've thought of it as that, like if we were to label the two people, just to make it clear,
right.
You know, the river, or the person sitting on the leaf going down the river, that is little Jody, let's say, and then real Jody is the one that's sitting on the bank realizing I'm not that. That is happening and I can witness it, but it's just a leaf and maybe somebody that looks like me. So rather than detachment, it's more of like this coming home. This is the real me, not that perception that little Jody has as she's screaming down the waterfall. So I don't look at it as detachment at all. I look at it as like stepping into like the whole of who I really am on a soul level or a different level. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, Jody, that is perfectly said. You're absolutely right. It's not either or, it's both and.
Yeah.
You are the person on the leaf and you are the person on the bank. And you're and if you can use those, if you can live in those two places simultaneously and wisely, then you get to engage in all of life and at the same time remain somewhat stable and at the same time. And until like when my students are in my course, usually it's in the second or third week that they get it. They get that. That's what they get, all of us. And it's like, wow, I really, and when so, I have to be a little gentle sometimes in making sure that I'm talking about it in a secular fashion, or if I'm talking about it in a spiritual fashion. If I'm teaching a church or, an interfaith group or something like that, we can actually start saying that real Jody may be our soul. And then we can get into the whole conversation of what is the real Jody and what is the conditioning that has been placed on Jody by the world, and how do we start digging through that so that we can get down to the real Jody. And my personal experience is that as we touch that, as Jody touches that real Jody, you become filled with a sense of unmistakable good.
Yeah.
And it leads you to a place where all you want to do in life is to relieve the suffering of others. And it's, if you go to a meditation retreat, all you see is like, you don't usually see too many mean and ugly people there.
Not exactly their place. Yeah, I get that.
Now, the question that I have that just popped into my mind is, if there's the two, and I am both, and theoretically, the one Jody that's on the bank looking at little Jody who's screaming down the waterfall. The reason why little Jody is even on the leaf screaming down the waterfall, theoretically, is because of the conditions and perceptions of her life.
True, and you really might be in white water, and there really might be a waterfall.
Maybe, yeah. Let's pretend there isn't a waterfall. It's all perception, because that's, I think, a lot of things come down to that perception that get you into that fight or flight state, and we make things a bigger deal. So now, is the third level, or is the next level about perhaps deconditioning little Jody, whatever that is? And then little Jody that was on the leaf going down the waterfall, screaming her head off, now becomes little Jody sitting beside other Jody.
Yeah, that's where you get to Walt's question of detachment. Do you really want to even go there?
Yeah.
I mean, I want to experience life. I want to be scared. I want to be angry. I want to be grieving. I want to have all of the experiences, because all of those things are part of what life is. The Buddha made a distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is inevitable. You cut yourself, you have physical damage that happens, it's painful. You have emotional damage, your heart breaks, you have empathetic damage, pain that occurs.
Yeah.
But what you do with it, is the conditioning.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the real Jody who cuts through the conditioning will not go through all of the mental machinations of, why is this happening to me? And it's not fair, and life isn't fair, and those people shouldn't have done that, and I should have. You won't be doing that, because that's conditioning. That is all of the teachers who told you can do better, and your mom who was scared that you were going to be run over by a car and screamed at you, and all these little things that made you feel you were bad when you were at a place in your life where you couldn't put it into context.
Yeah.
And so as you dig down through this stuff, and as you practice, this stuff comes up, and one of the next stages, once you get the basic skill down, we move on to something called labeling thoughts. So now what we do is we put our attention on our breath, our mind wanders, we have a thought, we notice our thought, we label it anxiety thinking or gambling or ruminating or projecting, or we start labeling it. And as we label it, it's a funny thing that the moment you label the thought, you deconstruct it. It loses its power. And it's like, okay, so here's something that makes me anxious. So here's a fearful thought, and here's a planning thought, and here's a protective thought. And you start noticing, God, I have protective thoughts a lot, or I have, gambling thoughts a lot. And I often think that your mind is like a little brat, and it just wants to bother you. And when you start like resisting it or trying to shut it up, it just gets energy from that. Mm-hmm. But when you can let it be and it just starts getting repetitive, you literally get bored.
Yes.
Of being anxious. You get bored of gambling. And when you get bored of it, you stop having the thoughts. And so it's funny, but you start to really have a say in the matter of what your mind thinks by allowing it and watching it, not by trying to force it anywhere.
You just did a brilliant job of answering the question before I asked it. What I was going to ask is, how do you allow it? And you just described it beautifully. That's probably the best description I've ever heard. Seriously.
Thanks.
That's really good. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also very reassuring. It truly is.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying that. It is very reassuring. I don't know what everyone else's experience is. I only know what goes on in my own head and what other people like you tell me that your experience is. But my experience seems to me to be what's like with everybody else. Isn't this the way everybody else experiences it? The way I'm experiencing it is the way everybody else experiences it, right? So here we are. We're having this particular conversation where we're talking about these different levels of detachment or enjoying from a different perspective or watching the watcher and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I think to myself, well, isn't that what everybody does? It's beginning to dawn on me. No, they don't. Like,
no, they don't. No, they don't. No, they don't.
They have no idea.
I can tell you because my students, they do their 10 minutes of guided meditation on the app and then they log it, and I see their daily logs. And I know how hard it is to pry them away from words like focus and concentrate and lost my focus and couldn't focus and was distracted. And there's all this, there's no allowing in there. And it literally takes 2 to 3 weeks of asking them to, you think that it would be okay if we could forget the word focus, maybe? Well, let's not say I couldn't keep my focus. Let's say my mind wandered,
Really?
And so I see that every day. But to your point there, let me share this with you. One of the things that is a big part of meditation, especially we pay special attention to watching our judging.
Right.
Okay, because that self-judging it's really the embodiment of all of the judgments that have been levied against us, throughout our lives, that have been ingrained in our brain.
Yeah, okay.
And we're kind of regurgitating it out against ourselves.
Okay.
So none of it has any accuracy and any kind of real truth. But there's the biblical scripture, judge not lest you be judged.
Right.
And everybody takes that to mean, well, I shouldn't be judging because that's God's job. And when I go to heaven, that's when I'll be judged. And that's when we get the final judgment. That's how most people take that statement. Yeah. But I take it differently.
Yeah, me too.
Just like you said, I kind of figure everybody else thinks pretty much like I do.
Sure. It's a common thing. Yeah.
So if I am judging people a lot, and they walk in and I say, oh, they're not wearing that dress doesn't look good on them, or they're too fat, or they're too thin, or they're this. I'm judging folks a lot. You're judging what they say. I like this, I don't like that. You're judging. Since, as you say, you figure everybody else thinks the way that you think, you figure you have to believe that they're judging all the time. Yeah, and that means people that are judging a lot in their minds go through life feeling like they're being judged all the time. And that is not fun.
Sure.
That is not fun. And so when we start watching our judging and we start getting bored of judging and it goes away, we start feeling like we're walking in our life not being judged. And then I can be who I am. I is what I is. I am what I am. I'm Popeye the Sailor Man, right? And being authentic like that and not worrying about being judged is so freeing and joyful that you can't help but be happy.
Yeah. I think what I was alluding to for my own frame of mind was, I mean, you described it in terms of judging, and certainly I've heard plenty of people talk about being focused on and fixated even on judging in that way. My own experience isn't so much one of being a judge, although I did that for many years, but not for quite some time. That's something more that I kind of slip into occasionally and then slip out of and slip into and slip out of. More of the time I'm out of it now. But the experience of, this is where layers become difficult to try to describe, but the experience of being somebody who is not normally judging, is discerning. I do have my likes and dislikes and likes and dislikes about other people, but I don't have a tendency to assume that they have similar dislikes or likes, or that they judge the same way, or that they think the same way. Mm-hmm. I think what I was alluding to earlier is how I figure that my shifting back and forth is similar to everybody else's shifting back and forth. And what I'm hearing from you is people actually stay fixated.
Oh yeah. You know, they are in their thoughts and they don't see any option of getting out of their thoughts. There is no option. They have
that blows my mind. It really does. Yeah, I mean, I believe you. It's not like I don't believe you. It's just that I can't imagine what that's like.
It's like not having any control over you, not having a say in the matter of your life.
There are lots of ways to do that, though.
I suppose so, you know, addiction, alcohol, you know, drugs, and losing that. But no, yeah, I mean, people. Now, I happen to deal with some, you know, major corporate executives. But I tell you, the ones that are the easiest to work with are the kids that I get out of the court system, foster kids. I do some classes around them, and they are so hungry to get out of their thoughts that they're willing to try just about anything to get out of their thoughts. But let me say, there was a video that was once part of a case. And there was this family, and there was a woman and two kids and two men, I guess 2 brothers. One was the dad. The kid was under 10, was berating his mom. And he was walking around with his pants halfway down his butt and his underwear showing. And just like his dad, no shirt, and he's berating his mom, and he got applauded by the 2 men for doing that.
Oh, wow.
So those kinds of experiences in our life tend to I can't even wrap my head around that one. I don't know what I was going with.
It's hard to finish some of these sentences.
Yeah,
that's the layers on top of layers.
But no, there people that are reactive and don't seem to put any thought into what they're doing. People that are rude, people that are non-empathic, people that don't have any sense of what's going on with you, that's the extreme case. But just people that are troubled. Most of my students on campus have a problem with being overthinking and anxious and self-critical. That's their biggest thing. And those thoughts are just running through their heads, racing through their heads, and they don't have any escape from it day and night, 24/7. And it's
I can appreciate that. I mean, it's not been a major part of my life, but there have been pieces of my life where I've been through that. And I can see that would be living that way all the time. I'd be amazed if I was still alive, to be honest.
Yeah. So there are people on maybe lower levels of energy that just maintain chronic thoughtlessness.
I never would have described that as chronic thoughtlessness, but I see your point.
Or chronic mindlessness, I guess I would say.
Or non-mindfulness.
Yeah, but it's chronic. It's constant.
Yeah.
They're not aware of what their mind is doing. It's just doing what it's doing. It's like an unrestrained child. Maybe that's the way to understand it. Is you think of a child who's doing whatever it wants to do and reacting however it wants to react, kind of on auto drive, before it starts to contemplate what it says and does. That's kind of still the mind that they have, even in adult life. There's just more data.
What are you thinking about, Jody Lynn, when you're hearing Bob saying all this? I mean, I'm kind of guiding him down this path here, but I'm curious to know what your take is on where we're going with this.
Yeah, well, I think it's fascinating. It's all things that we've talked about, but I think that we're starting to see more of this, the chronic mindlessness, or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
I'm seeing more and more people who aren't, like, they're just trapped in their head and they don't know how to get out. They don't even realize that there's an observer, or the option to observe and allow this stuff to move. And I think it really robs us when we're in that state, because I think I get into that state sometimes too. Like, I can think of, on Monday, I was late for an appointment because I was on hold, and I was irritated with the person that I was on hold with because they weren't giving me the information, and like it just kept building and building and building. And then I got in my car and I was late, and I was like, oh, I should have left 10 minutes ago. I'm going to be late now. And then it was like all of this, and I couldn't calm myself down. And I was driving in my car and I'm like, wow, I'm really anxious right now. Like, I'm really, really anxious. So I was really allowing it to like run my life or get away from itself. And then I'll come back because I have the tools and practice and whatever of, okay, like, what's going on? Like, seriously, if you're late, like, no one's going to die. You're going to be fine. You're going to be like 2 minutes late. That is okay. But obviously there was something in there that kept repeating of like, you're a bad person when you're late, or like, you always show up late, or like all of these things that were going on that I was in the moment of the height of frustration was like, oh my God, I want you to stop. Why are you berating me right now? Rather than in that moment, taking a breath and just allowing it to move past.
Yeah.
All right, I see you. Yeah, go ahead. Have a freak out. Go ahead. And it would have been much faster, except it took me the whole 40-minute drive to get to that point instead of as soon as I hopped into my car.
Well, I mean, Bob, isn't that the point of learning to be a regular meditator, is learning to develop that skill more quickly, the way Jody Lynn was describing?
Yeah. The reason that we use the breath, you don't have to use the breath. You could use a candle. You could use, a pen. You could use anything. Forming an intention, put your attention on the candle. But the reason we use our breath is because it's always with you. No matter where you go. And so like the other day,
otherwise we wouldn't be around very long.
Yeah. So the other day I went to the supermarket and I was in a rush. Jody, I was in a rush. Yeah. I was late and I got into a line and there was only one person ahead of me and she only had a few things. But then she opened up her 3-ring binder with all the coupons.
You're like,
Yeah, and the conversation started down the road. Oh, I'm sorry, man, but this is the regular. The coupon is for the super deluxe. Oh, well, I'll go get it.
oh,
Let me go change it.
That's why I start looking for another aisle.
right. So my breath. So all I do, I just take a breath and put my intention on my breath for a little bit, and my mind starts to wander, and then after a few moments, she's done, and it's my turn. I can slip into that because I'm comfortable with it. I'm used to it, so I can slip into that. But
so how does? Sorry for interrupting. You can Bob.
Yeah.
How does that, what we've been just talking about the chatter in your mind, the observance of it, how does that connect to awe?
To awe. So for me, awe is the sense of losing yourself. It really is that moment where you just aren't there. You have joined, at least on some level, you've just joined with the sunset. You just taken with it, and that's all there is. What you asked me, how does the idea of the meditative techniques join with awe? I don't know that there's a connection there. Let me just go back there. I think that cultivating awe is its own practice. You intentionally cultivate awe, just like we have a meditation called the metta or loving kindness meditation, where the purpose of it is to learn the physical sensation of your heart opening. And you cultivate that simply to cultivate loving kindness. Gratitude practice, forgiveness practice. These are all things that you cultivate individually, but they're kind of all based on that ability to watch yourself. The scientists call it metacognition, the idea of thinking about your thinking. So you develop the skill of thinking about your thinking, and then that gives you the ability to put it into all these different aspects that you can cultivate, independently. So awe is something that, you cultivate. You put yourself in situations. I get up way before dawn every day, and I take my dogs to the park at dawn every day, and I have a particular welcoming ritual to welcome the day. Generally has to do with the fact that I reflect on the fact that I'm trading a day of my life for this new day, and that when it's over, the only thing that's going to be left in it, in my knowledge, to my knowledge, is whatever I leave in it. And there's a lot fewer days ahead of me than there are behind me at this point in my life. So my days are valuable, and I just reflect on, that. And there are times when I cry, and there are times when I feel awe, and, I'm surrounded by the love of my dogs and, the freshness of the morn. And so, by having that ritual every day, I'm constantly, cultivating a sense of awe.
I was just going to say, that sounds like, awe. That sounds like a lot of awe going on there.
Yeah.
A lot of awe. Yeah. It's funny when people say there's meditation, that sounds like something I need. Yeah. I said, well, would you put 10 minutes a day into it? Oh, I don't know if I have 10 minutes. And then you say, well, you could get up 10 minutes earlier. They go, what are you, nuts? Do you know there is an actual ROI to meditation, to the time spent in meditation?
I'm not surprised, but I hadn't heard about it.
Yeah. It's like 300 to 450%
really?
ROI. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
If you put in 15 minutes a day, the research shows that during the day you will save anywhere from 45 to an hour and a half of time will come back to you.
Now, when you say 45 minutes to an hour and a half will come back to you, what do you mean by come back to you?
Because remember, we started out, we were talking about intuitive intelligence and so when you take 15 minutes of quiet time, even if it's not formal meditation, even if it's just sitting outside with your cup of coffee and watching the birds, I mean, whatever, but you take 15 minutes, of quiet time, and you allow your verbal mind to do its thing, but it gives your intuitive mind a chance to think about everything that's going to be happening in the day. I mean, you're starting the day, so you're thinking about what you got to do. Your intuitive mind will actually start to prioritize your time and thinking about it. And so if you had to stop at 5 different places, you might have gone to the closest place first, but the hunch that you will get by taking the time in the morning to allow your intuitive mind to work, it will already figure out that it's going to be more efficient to go this, and then that. And you will think it's your idea. It'll come up for you like it's an idea. No, I think I'll do that one first. And so the idea that you have of what you decide really comes from that intuitive place. And if you give it a chance to do the work that it's designed to do, it will give you good advice. So you get back the time because you become more efficient in the things that you do.
So in other words, what we're really saying here is that the meditation is giving you the opportunity to get more out of your life.
Yes. What Master Nee, we asked Master Nee 2 things. What's it like to be Master Nee? And he simply responded, no rehearsing thoughts.
I love it.
No rehearsing thoughts. He never thinks
that's
about
a great measure right there. That really
he never thinks about what he's going to do, what he's going to say. And then we asked him if he would define mastery.
Okay.
He said, living with a masterful life means living effortlessly, yet effectively and efficiently.
Oh, okay.
And you have up here the title, When the I Ching Speaks.
Yeah.
So that's a whole nother conversation about the I Ching. But those coins that my therapist threw,
right,
that was the I Ching.
Oh, it was? Okay.
That's what he did. And that was the practice that Master Nee taught me. Okay. And it is the path to gaining that kind of mastery in life. Because what the I Ching teaches you is to be able to identify the quality of the dynamic that's going on with you at any particular time and how to align yourself with that dynamic. Like, for example, if you're out in the ocean and you want to swim into shore, there are 2 dynamics. Either the tide is going in or the tide is coming out. Mm-hmm. So if you notice that the tide is going in, the way to align yourself with that would be to swim like heck. If it's going out, the way to align yourself with that is to reserve your energy and hold your spot, but not waste energy fighting the tide, because that's not the dynamic. It's against you. So there's a different way to react when the dynamic is not favorable. You come within, you reserve your energy, you wait, because the time is going to change when it's going with you again. And so you swim like heck and you stay, and you swim like heck and you reserve. And that's why when you see people doing Tai Chi, they're going forward and they're holding back, because the cycles of life are like that. Good times turn to bad times turn to good times. How do you act in good times? How does a chipmunk act? He reserves some nuts for the winter.
True enough, yeah.
Right? How do you act in bad times? Well, we try to fight our way out of it, but the better thing to do is to hold and be patient, because the time will change. And so that's what the I Ching teaches.
That's beautiful. I love it. Yeah. Jody Lynn, I think we have a couple of conclusions that we have to draw here. The first one is we need to have Bob back.
Yes.
right? And Bob, I actually want to bring you back twice.
Okay.
Because one, if I brought you back and Jody Lynn wasn't part of it, she probably wouldn't speak to me anymore. And the second is I have another host I want you to meet, because he has adopted 3 boys out of the foster care system and found homes for 43 boys.
Wow.
And all of them were considered unadoptable. I wanted you and him to have a conversation.
Oh my. He'll make me cry.
Yeah, that one's, I'm looking forward to that one as well. So we're definitely going to have you back a couple times.
Okay.
But we do have to wrap this one up, because we've used up our hour. As so often happens, it flies right by when we're having a great time, and I've been having a great time. I know Jody Lynn has too. But we have a few practices we'd like to do here. First and foremost, we know that we didn't even talk about this. You have a podcast that you're going to be starting soon.
Yeah, I am.
You need to introduce this podcast, tell people about it, and then ideally it would be really good if people knew how to find you.
Oh, yeah. So the podcast is going to be A Wise and Happy Life. And it is going to be about, all things mindful, of course, but also touching on politics and religion and stuff like that, because what I'm finding is that people tend to not engage in what's going on around them. And there's kind of a growing ignorance of how the systems that they live in work. And that itself creates unhappiness and anxiety.
That's true.
It's like they go around knowing that they're going to get hit upside the head, but not knowing where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
And that is more anxious. It's like going to the dentist. You're more anxious about going to the dentist than what happens when you get there. So we'll touch on all of those things that are stressors. And you can find me and a couple of free downloadable ebooks about meditation and de-stressing at my website, which is awiseandhappylife.com.
All right. Thank you. So that's really good. Second thing that we need to do is a practice that I've been doing now for the last few years. That you're one of the guests who comes onto the show, and I say to myself, wow, I'm really glad I do this, because this is perfect. I do this with all the guests, and it is good with all the guests. It's true for all of them, but there are certain guests that come along. You're one of them where I'm like, wow, I can't wait to say this part. But I noticed a few years ago that anytime any of us come onto podcasts like this, so I mean, I've had hundreds of guests here on the show over the years, and all of them they learned something, they went through some tough times, dark night of the soul, whatever it might have been. They came out the other side, they learned stuff, they want to share it with the world, and they do share it through coaching and through books and courses and you name it. And they go onto podcasts in order to share it, and they write blogs to share it, and they go onto social media to share it, and they do all the sharing, and they share it with a whole bunch of people they never even heard about, and they never find out what happened with them. And that's where I noticed the gap. I said, well, we really should be giving some credit for that. So that's what I like to do. I like to say, Bob, on behalf of those people you've never met, never seen, never will meet, never will see, who you've been helping in all these ways that you don't even know what the result was, on their behalf, thank you for what you're doing. Because you're making a big difference in this world.
I appreciate that. But, back at you, because running a podcast is not an easy thing. It's a lot of time and effort, and it's an act of love. And you are the one that gives the platform for people like me to be able to do what you're thanking me for. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, I love it. Which leads to the final thing that we do every episode. That's where I have wonderful people like Jody Lynn doing the co-hosting with me, because they're so damn good at tying the whole thing together and making it all just come together in one perfect statement or one perfect phrase. And of all my co-hosts, I have wonderful co-hosts. I've had dozens of co-hosts over the years who are terrific. Jody Lynn, I think, is probably the best one. I know I say that a lot, Jody Lynn. She's so good at tying these together. And I say that every time, knowing that I'm putting pressure on her. Every time I do that, she comes out with an even better one. So I can't wait to see what it's going to be today. So Jody Lynn, now that I've really just built the whole thing up, what's your tie up?
Oh man, wow, we've circled the globe, it feels like, in today's conversation, from the magic of the carnival, popcorn and candy, to cocaine cowboy days. Who knew we would end up where we ended up, in this place of allowing and observance? And Bob, I think the service that you're bringing to the world of allowing them to slow down and see, allowing them to slow down and feel and get out of whatever thought prison they have previously been succumbed to. You're giving them the opportunity to change their life. And I love some of the phrases that you brought to us today, and I'm going to bring them up now. You said change happens instantaneously, but the preparation for change can take a long time. And I think more people need to step into that grace, that opportunity, that privilege of this one life that we get, and the opportunity to make it this beautiful, extraordinary experience that it was supposed to be. So thank you for that reminder.
Like I said, she's pretty damn good at this.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Yeah, we're definitely going to have you back again. And
Okay.
I'm not sure when that's going to be, because we're literally booked a month out right now, but I'll have to get in touch with you. We'll figure out a time.
I'm going to be in Costa Rica all the month of January.
Let's see if we can get it in December.
No, January's fine.
January's okay. Oh, okay. Well, I don't know how remote in Costa Rica.
We do have Wi-Fi.
Well, yeah, I know they do. It's just a question of what part of Costa Rica you're in.
No, we're so fortunate that we have January's and July's. We're in Costa Rica.
Oh, beautiful.
And,
that's a gorgeous thing. So yeah, we'll be in touch about that. But thank you, Bob, for joining us.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. And thank you to our podcast listeners everywhere. We'll see you all next time. You're on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.